Imagine for a moment that everything you have been told about aging is slightly wrong. Not dramatically wrong, not dangerously wrong, but just off-center enough that you have been aiming at the wrong target for years. You have likely been told that feeling slower, carrying a few extra pounds, losing a bit of strength each year, and experiencing that afternoon mental fog are simply what happens when the calendar advances. You may have accepted these changes as inevitable, as the price of living long enough to see your children grow and your grandchildren arrive. But here is something worth considering. What if many of the changes you attribute to aging are not aging at all? What if they are something else entirely? Something that has less to do with the passage of time and more to do with how the body has been asked to function year after year. There is a quiet shift that happens inside the human body. A gradual reprogramming that occurs when certain conditions are present day after day, decade after decade. This shift affects how you access energy, how you recover from effort, how clearly you think, and how easily you maintain your strength. It feels like aging because it happens slowly, imperceptibly, until one day you realize you cannot do something that used to be simple. But here is the part that rarely gets discussed. This shift is not permanent. The body retains the capacity to change direction, to rebuild capacities that seemed lost, to function differently than it has been functioning. This is not about reversing time or pretending that 60 feels like 30. It is about understanding what the body actually needs and giving it those things consistently enough that it remembers how to respond. What you are about to hear is not another list of rules or prescriptions. It is an exploration of how the body was designed to work, how modern life has quietly disrupted that design, and what becomes possible when you gently restore conditions that the body recognizes as normal. The implications go far beyond how you look in the mirror. They touch on whether you remain independent, whether you maintain your mental clarity, whether you have the energy to do what matters. There is a path that many people miss, not because it is hidden, but because it runs counter to so much of what passes for conventional wisdom. It starts with understanding something fundamental about how the body fuels itself, and why the timing of that fuel may matter as much as the fuel itself. You are listening to the Longevity Library, where we archive the wisdom of healthy aging. Living well in the second half, a calm exploration of health, energy, and longevity. There comes a point in life when the questions change. In younger years, people often ask themselves how fast they can run, how much they can lift, how many hours they can work, or how little sleep they can survive on. The metrics of youth tend to be about performance, achievement, and pushing limits. Sometime after 50, the questions shift. They become quieter but more meaningful. How can I maintain my energy throughout the day? How can I stay strong enough to do the things I enjoy? How can I avoid the chronic health problems that seem to surround so many people my age? How can I feel as good 10 years from now as I do today? These are not questions with simple answers. There is no single pill, no perfect diet, no exercise routine that guarantees a long and vibrant life. But there is a growing body of observation and research that points towards certain patterns. People who age well, who maintain their health and vitality into their later decades, tend to live in ways that share common threads. This is not about rules to follow or prescriptions to obey. It is about understanding how the human body works, what it expects from its environment, and how small adjustments over time can lead to very different outcomes. The goal is not perfection. The goal is simply to move in a direction that supports the body's natural design rather than working against it. The body as a system of adaptation. To understand what supports long-term health, it helps to understand something fundamental about how living organisms work. The human body is not a static machine that gradually wears out according to a fixed schedule. It is an adaptive system that responds constantly to the conditions it encounters. Every day, in countless ways, the body reads its environment and adjusts its functioning accordingly. When you lift something heavy, the body receives a signal that strength matters in this environment, and it responds by building slightly more muscle. When you walk uphill, the body receives a signal that cardiovascular efficiency matters, and it responds by making small improvements to heart and lung function. When you go without food for a period, the body receives a signal that fuel efficiency matters, and it responds by becoming better at accessing stored energy. These adaptations happen whether you are aware of them or not. They are the body's way of preparing for the conditions it expects to face in the future. If you regularly subject yourself to certain stresses, the body assumes those stresses will continue and adapts accordingly. If you live a life of consistent comfort and ease, the body assumes that comfort and ease are the norm and adapts to that instead. This is neither good nor bad. It is simply how living systems work. The implications, however, are profound. The choices you make today, the patterns you repeat week after week, are literally shaping your body for the future. Your body is becoming more adapted to whatever you regularly ask of it. The question, then, is what do you want your body to be adapted for? Do you want it to be efficient at storing fat against the possibility of famine? Then eat constantly and never go long between meals. Do you want it to be capable of sustained physical effort? Then move regularly and in varied ways. Do you want it to be resilient against stress? Then expose it to manageable challenges and give it time to recover. The body does not judge these choices. It simply responds. Understanding this adaptive capacity is the foundation upon which everything else rests. The problem of constant abundance. For the vast majority of human history, food was not consistently available. Our ancestors lived in environments where feasting and fasting alternated naturally. Sometimes there was plenty. Sometimes there was little. The body evolved to handle both conditions, storing energy when food was abundant and accessing those stores when it was not. This ancient design worked well for hundreds of thousands of years. It allowed humans to survive in unpredictable environments and to thrive across diverse climates and conditions. The metabolic systems that regulate energy storage and usage are masterpieces of evolutionary engineering, refined over countless generations. Then, in the blink of an evolutionary eye, everything changed. For the first time in history, large populations gained continuous access to food. Not just continuous access, but continuous access to foods concentrated in sugar and refined carbohydrates, foods that never existed in nature. And not just continuous access, but continuous encouragement to eat, with food available at every street corner, in every workplace, at every social gathering, in gas stations and drugstores and shops of every description. The body never evolved for this. It is still operating under the assumption that food is sometimes scarce, that periods without eating are normal and expected. It still has all the machinery for accessing stored fat, for running on internal fuel, for repairing itself during times when digestion is not occurring. But that machinery has fallen into disuse for many people. The result is a population that is, metabolically speaking, poorly adapted to its environment. The body stores fat efficiently because that is what it evolved to do when food is present. But it never gets the signal to access that fat because food is always present again before the body ever enters a fasting state. The fat accumulates year after year, and the metabolic pathways for burning it grow weaker from lack of use. This is not a character flaw or a failure of willpower. It is a mismatch between ancient biology and modern conditions. Understanding this mismatch is the first step toward working with your body rather than against it. The natural rhythm of eating and not eating. Every human culture, throughout history, has had patterns of eating and not eating. These patterns varied based on geography, season, and circumstance. But the one constant was that people did not eat continuously from waking to sleeping. There were gaps between meals. There were times when digestion was not occurring. These gaps served a purpose. During periods without food, the body could shift its attention from the work of digestion to the work of repair and maintenance. Energy that would have been used to process new food could be directed toward cleaning up cellular debris, repairing damaged structures, and optimizing function. This is not a mystical concept. It is practical biology. Digestion is expensive work. It requires significant energy and resources. When the digestive system is constantly active, those resources are constantly diverted from other tasks. When digestion pauses, those resources become available for other purposes. The modern pattern of eating, for many people, allows no such pause. Breakfast starts the digestive process shortly after waking. Mid-morning snacks keep it going. Lunch continues. Afternoon snacks extended. Dinner adds another load. Evening snacks may keep digestion active right up until sleep. For some, the digestive system never gets a true break. This constant digestive demand has consequences. The body never fully shifts into repair mode. The cellular cleaning processes that require energy and attention never get their turn. Over years and decades, this may contribute to the gradual accumulation of cellular damage that characterizes the aging process. The alternative is not starvation or extreme deprivation. It is simply reintroducing gaps, allowing periods between eating when digestion can complete and the body can attend to other matters. For most people, this means questioning the assumption that eating must happen constantly throughout the day. What happens in the gap? When food is absent from the digestive tract for a sufficient period, several things begin to happen. None of them are dramatic or immediately noticeable. They are quiet processes, happening at the cellular level. But over time, they accumulate into meaningful differences. The first thing that shifts is fuel source. In the hours after a meal, the body runs primarily on glucose from that meal. As glucose levels decline, the body begins to access stored glycogen from the liver and muscles. When glycogen stores are sufficiently depleted, the body starts to tap into fat stores, converting stored fat into fuel that cells can use. This transition is seamless when it happens smoothly. The body does not announce that it has switched fuel sources. You do not feel a shift. But the ability to make this transition efficiently is exactly what distinguishes metabolically flexible individuals from those who are dependent on constant external fuel. The second thing that happens in the gap is the activation of cellular maintenance processes. Cells begin to survey their internal components, identifying damaged proteins and structures that need to be cleared away. This housekeeping activity is essential for maintaining cellular health over time. Cells that accumulate too much damage eventually function poorly or die. The third thing is a reduction in various signals associated with growth and division. When nutrients are constantly present, cells receive constant signals to grow and divide. This is appropriate in youth, when growth is the priority. But later in life, constant growth signals may be less desirable. Periods without food allow these signals to quiet down. None of these processes require extreme measures. They do not require fasting for days at a time. They simply require regular, predictable periods when the body is not digesting food. For many people, this means nothing more than allowing 12 to 14 hours between the last meal of one day and the first meal of the next. The question of meal frequency. How many meals should a person eat in a day? The question seems simple, but the answer depends entirely on context. There is no universal correct number that applies to everyone in every situation. What can be observed is that many people in modern societies eat more frequently than their ancestors did. 3 meals plus snacks has become the default pattern, often without any conscious decision about whether that frequency serves health or merely habit. When people experiment with reducing meal frequency, they often discover something unexpected. They are not as hungry as they thought they would be. The first few days may require some adjustment, but within a few weeks, a new pattern emerges. 2 meals a day begins to feel natural. The midday meal and the evening meal provide adequate nutrition. The morning passes easily without food. Some people find that they naturally gravitate toward 1 meal a day. This is not a goal to pursue aggressively, but for some individuals, it happens organically as metabolic flexibility improves. They simply are not hungry for more than one substantial meal. They have energy. They maintain their strength, and they feel no sense of deprivation. The key observation is that meal frequency tends to decrease as metabolic health improves. People who are metabolically flexible, who can easily access stored fat for fuel, do not experience the same hunger signals as those who are dependent on constant glucose. Their bodies are comfortable running on internal fuel for extended periods. This suggests that meal frequency is not something to impose from the outside, but something that emerges from internal condition. When the body is healthy and well adapted, it signals its needs clearly. The challenge for many people is that their signaling systems have been distorted by years of constant eating and poor food quality. They cannot trust their hunger because their hunger is not reflecting genuine need. Rebuilding metabolic communication. The body has sophisticated systems for communicating its energy needs. Hunger signals, satiety signals, energy levels, and cravings all carry information about what is happening internally. But these signals can become unreliable when they are constantly overridden or ignored. Consider what happens with constant snacking. If you eat every few hours, your blood glucose never has a chance to decline significantly. Insulin never fully drops. The body never experiences a state of mild energy deficit. Under these conditions, true hunger never has a chance to emerge. What feels like hunger may actually be habit, boredom, or blood sugar fluctuations rather than genuine need. Rebuilding reliable metabolic communication takes time. It requires allowing the body to experience the full cycle of eating, digestion, and the post-absorptive state. It means not preemptively eating at the first hint of hunger, but waiting to see if that hunger intensifies or passes. It means learning to distinguish between true hunger and the various other sensations that can mimic it. This process is not about willpower or deprivation. It is about giving the body space to reset its signaling systems. When you stop eating constantly, when you allow gaps between meals, the body gradually recalibrates. Hunger becomes a more reliable indicator of actual need. Satiety becomes easier to recognize. The constant background noise of food thoughts often quiets down. For people who have spent decades eating on schedules rather than in response to genuine hunger, this recalibration can take weeks or months. It requires patience and a willingness to sit with uncertainty. But the result is a more trustworthy relationship with food, one based on internal signals rather than external rules. The quality of fuel matters. What you eat during your meals matters as much as when you eat them. The body can run on many different fuels, but some support long-term health better than others. The modern food environment is flooded with products that did not exist a century ago. Industrial seed oils, refined sugars, highly processed carbohydrates, and chemical additives have become ubiquitous. These substances provide calories but often lack the accompanying nutrients that the body needs to process them effectively. When you eat whole foods, foods that are close to their natural state, you get more than just macronutrients. You get the fiber, the micronutrients, the phytochemicals that have co-evolved with human digestion for millennia. These accompanying compounds matter. They slow absorption, moderate blood sugar response, and provide the raw materials for countless metabolic processes. Protein deserves particular attention, especially as people age. The body becomes less efficient at using dietary protein for muscle maintenance over time. This means that older individuals may need to pay more attention to protein intake than younger ones. Adequate protein at each meal supports muscle preservation, and muscle mass is closely linked to independence and function in later years. Vegetables provide nutrients in a package that the body processes slowly. The carbohydrates in vegetables are embedded in fibrous structures that delay their release into the bloodstream. This means that vegetables do not cause the same blood sugar spikes as more refined carbohydrate sources. They can be eaten generously without the same metabolic consequences. Fats are not all created equal. The body needs fat for countless functions, from hormone production to cell membrane integrity. But the types of fat matter. Fats from whole food sources, from animals raised appropriately, from olives and avocados and nuts, provide different signals to the body than industrially processed seed oils. The latter are recent additions to the human diet, and their long-term effects are still being understood. The role of movement throughout life. Movement is another area where modern life diverges sharply from historical patterns. For most of human history, movement was not optional. It was required for survival. People walked to get places, lifted to accomplish tasks, and used their bodies constantly throughout the day. The modern environment has eliminated most of this required movement. Chairs, cars, and screens have replaced walking, standing, and physical work. For many people, the only intentional movement they get is whatever they schedule as exercise. And for many, that scheduled movement is insufficient to maintain the physical capacity they want in later years. The body expects to move. It adapts to the movement it gets. If you sit most of the day, the body adapts to sitting. Muscles weaken. Joints stiffen. Metabolic processes slow. This adaptation happens gradually, imperceptibly, until one day you realize you cannot do something that used to be easy. The alternative is not necessarily hours at the gym. It is more about weaving movement into daily life in ways that accumulate over time. Walking is perhaps the most underrated form of movement. It requires no special equipment, no gym membership, no particular skill. It can be done anywhere, at any time, and it provides benefits that extend far beyond the calories burned. Stronger movement, the kind that challenges muscles and cardiovascular systems, also matters. The body needs occasional reasons to maintain strength and endurance. Lifting things, climbing things, moving quickly for short periods. These activities send signals that the body should maintain the capacity for such efforts. The key insight is that movement variety matters. The body is designed for many different types of movement. Walking, running, climbing, lifting, carrying, balancing. When you only do one type of movement, you only maintain capacity for that type. A well-rounded movement practice, one that includes different challenges, maintains capacity across more domains. The stress response and its management. Stress has become a catch-all term for everything from minor annoyance to genuine threat. But from a biological perspective, stress is simply anything that disrupts the body's equilibrium. The stress response is the body's attempt to restore that equilibrium. This response is ancient and powerful. When faced with a challenge, the body mobilizes resources. It releases hormones that increase alertness, raise blood sugar, and prepare for action. This response served our ancestors well when the challenge was a predator or a physical threat. It prepared them to fight or flee. The problem in modern life is that the stress response activates constantly, often for challenges that do not require physical action. A difficult email, a traffic jam, a worrying news story. These can trigger the same hormonal cascade as a genuine physical threat. But unlike a physical threat, these modern stressors do not resolve through action. The hormones circulate without being used, and the body remains in a state of activation. Over time, chronic activation takes a toll. The systems that manage stress become fatigued. The body remains in a state of low-grade alarm, which affects sleep, digestion, immunity, and mood. The cumulative effect of years of chronic stress may be as significant as any other factor in the aging process. Managing stress does not mean eliminating challenges. It means creating conditions where the stress response can complete its cycle and then return to baseline. After a period of activation, there must be a period of recovery. Without recovery, the system never resets. This is where practices that promote calm and restoration become relevant. Time in nature, away from the constant stimulation of screens and notifications, allows the nervous system to settle. Gentle movement, like walking, can help process the metabolic byproducts of stress. Quiet time, with no particular goal, gives the mind space to wander and rest. The specific practices matter less than the principle. Activation must be balanced with recovery. A life that is all activation, with no intentional recovery, eventually depletes the systems that manage stress. A life that builds in regular periods of calm and restoration allows those systems to remain resilient. Sleep is foundation. Sleep is not optional. It is not a luxury or a sign of laziness. It is a biological necessity, as fundamental as food and water. During sleep, the body performs functions that cannot happen during wakefulness. Tissues repair. Memories consolidate. Waste products are cleared from the brain. Hormones are balanced. The modern world has become hostile to sleep. Artificial light extends the day well past sunset. Screens emit blue light that suppresses the body's natural sleep signals. Schedules demand early waking regardless of when sleep occurred. Caffeine masks sleepiness. Alcohol, though it may help with falling asleep, disrupts sleep architecture later in the night. For people over 50, sleep often becomes more fragile. It may take longer to fall asleep. Waking during the night becomes more common. Deep sleep may decrease. These changes are normal, but they do not mean that sleep is less important. If anything, sleep becomes more important as the body has less reserve to compensate for poor rest. The conditions that support good sleep are well understood but not always easy to implement. Consistency matters. Going to bed and waking at similar times helps anchor the body's internal clock. Darkness matters. The bedroom should be as dark as possible, with blackout curtains if necessary. Cool temperature matters. The body needs to cool down to initiate and maintain sleep. Perhaps most importantly, the hours before bed matter. What you do in the evening sets the stage for what happens during the night. Intense stimulation, whether from screens, arguments, or exciting entertainment, makes it harder for the nervous system to settle into sleep mode. A gradual wind down, with decreasing light and decreasing stimulation, supports the natural transition to sleep. Sleep is not something to optimize or hack. It is something to protect. When sleep is sufficient and restorative, everything else works better. Appetite signals are more reliable. Energy is more consistent. Mood is more stable. The body's repair processes have time to do their work. Social connection and longevity. One of the most consistent findings in longevity research has nothing to do with diet or exercise. It has to do with social connection. People who maintain strong social ties, who have people they can count on, who feel part of a community, tend to live longer and healthier lives. This finding is so consistent across different populations and research methods that it cannot be ignored. Something about being connected to others supports health in ways that are not fully explained by other factors. It may be that social connection reduces stress, or that it provides practical support during difficult times, or that it gives life meaning and purpose. Probably all of these play a role. The challenge for many people over 50 is that social connections can become harder to maintain. Retirement removes the daily contact with colleagues. Children grow up and move away. Friends may move or pass away. The social networks that were taken for granted in middle age can fray unless they are actively maintained. Maintaining social connection in later years often requires intentionality. It means reaching out to people, making plans, showing up. It means finding new communities when old ones dissolve. It means being willing to be the one who organizes the gathering or makes the phone call. The quality of connections matters as much as quantity. A few close relationships, people with whom you can be yourself, provide more support than many superficial acquaintances. But a mix of both may be ideal. Close ties for deep support, and a broader network for variety and opportunity. Social connection is not just about preventing loneliness. It is about remaining engaged with life. It is about having reasons to get up in the morning, people to look forward to seeing, conversations that stimulate the mind. These intangible factors may be as important for long-term health as any physical practice. Purpose and meaning. Closely related to social connection is the sense of purpose. People who feel that their lives have meaning, that they have reasons to get up in the morning, tend to fare better across multiple measures of health. This makes intuitive sense. Purpose organizes behavior. It provides motivation. It makes challenges feel worthwhile. Purpose does not have to be grand or world-changing. It can be as simple as caring for a garden, helping with grandchildren, volunteering at a local organization, or pursuing a creative project. What matters is that it feels meaningful to the person doing it. After major life transitions like retirement or the departure of children, purpose can become less clear. The roles that define daily life for decades may disappear. Without something to replace them, days can feel empty and directionless. This is not just an emotional issue. It may have physical consequences through the mechanisms of stress, motivation, and behavior. Finding purpose in later years often involves looking beyond paid work and parenting. What skills and interests have been neglected? What contributions can you make that draw on decades of experience? What have you always wanted to learn or do? These questions can point toward new sources of meaning. Purpose also provides a buffer against the inevitable difficulties of life. When hard things happen, a sense of purpose helps put them in perspective. It reminds you that there are still reasons to keep going, still things worth doing, still connections worth maintaining. The environment you create. Your environment shapes your behavior more than you probably realize. The default options in your surroundings, what is visible, what is easy, what is convenient, strongly influence what you actually do. This is not a character flaw. It is how humans are designed. We take the path of least resistance. If healthy food is visible and easy to reach, you are more likely to eat it. If unhealthy food is visible and easy to reach, you are more likely to eat that instead. If exercise equipment is set up and ready to use, you are more likely to use it. If it requires digging through a closet and setting something up, you are less likely to bother. This insight can be used constructively. You can shape your environment to make healthy choices easier and unhealthy choices harder. You can arrange your kitchen so that good foods are at eye level and less good foods are out of sight. You can set out walking shoes by the door. You can create spaces that invite movement and calm rather than sitting and scrolling. The environment also includes the information you consume. News, social media, and entertainment all shape your mental environment. Constant exposure to alarming or upsetting content keeps the stress system activated. Constant exposure to idealized images can create dissatisfaction with ordinary life. What you let into your mind matters as much as what you let into your body. Creating a supportive environment does not mean eliminating all challenges. It means making the choices you want to make also the easy choices. It means designing your surroundings to support your intentions rather than undermining them. The cumulative effect of small choices. None of these factors operates in isolation. Diet, movement, sleep, stress management, social connection, purpose, environment, they all interact. Improvement in one area tends to support improvement in others. Deterioration in one area tends to pull others down with it. This is why small changes, consistently applied, can produce significant results over time. You do not need to transform your entire life overnight. You just need to move in a better direction. Day after day, week after week. The body responds to these consistent signals. It adapts to whatever you regularly do. The person who walks regularly, eats reasonably well, maintains social connections, and protects their sleep is not doing anything extraordinary. They are simply living in a way that aligns reasonably well with what the body expects. Over decades, that alignment produces different outcomes than a life spent fighting against the body's design. This is not about perfection. Everyone has periods when they eat poorly, move little, sleep badly, and feel disconnected. These periods are part of life. What matters is the overall pattern, the general direction, the tendency over time. A few days of poor choices do not undo years of good ones. A few days of good choices do not undo years of poor ones. The body averages out the signals it receives. The question of how long to eat. One of the more interesting observations from longevity research involves not just what people eat, but when they eat it. Populations with high rates of healthy aging often have patterns of eating that include substantial daily gaps between the last meal of one day and the first meal of the next. This pattern is not usually intentional. It emerges naturally from traditional ways of living. People finish their evening meal, go to sleep, and do not eat again until the next morning. If breakfast is late or lunch is early, the gap may be 12 hours or more. If breakfast is skipped and lunch is the first meal, the gap may be longer. During this daily gap, the body experiences a period without incoming fuel. This is the window when fat stores become available for energy, when cellular cleaning processes have space to operate, when insulin levels drop and stay low. It is a daily reset, a chance for the body to do things that cannot happen while digestion is active. Modern eating patterns often eliminate this daily gap. Late-night eating pushes the last meal close to sleep. Early morning eating starts the digestive process soon after waking. Snacks throughout the day prevent any prolonged period without food. The daily reset never happens. Restoring a daily gap does not require extreme measures. It simply means finishing evening eating early enough that several hours pass before sleep, and then not eating again until sometime the next day. For many people, this is simply a return to how humans ate for most of history, before artificial light and constant food availability changed the pattern. The body's remarkable capacity for change. It is easy to look at where you are today and assume that this is where you will always be. The body feels a certain way. Habits feel fixed. The future feels like an extension of the present. But the body is always changing. It is always adapting to current conditions. The person who starts walking regularly will, in a few months, have a different body than the person who remains sedentary. The person who adjusts their eating patterns will, in a few months, have different metabolic responses than the person who continues eating constantly. The person who prioritizes sleep will, in a few months, have different recovery capacity than the person who burns the candle at both ends. These changes happen whether you intend them or not. The body is always adapting to whatever you give it. The question is whether you are consciously directing that adaptation or simply letting it happen by default. The good news is that it is never too late to change direction. The body retains its capacity for adaptation throughout life. An 80-year-old who begins walking will still improve cardiovascular fitness. A 70-year-old who adjusts their eating will still see metabolic changes. The body responds to current signals, not past ones. This does not mean that all changes are equally easy at all ages. The body of a 70-year-old does not adapt as quickly as the body of a 20-year-old. But it does adapt. Improvement is always possible. The trajectory can always shift. The integration of all factors. If there is a single theme that runs through all of this, it is integration. Health in later years is not about any single practice or avoidance of any single substance. It is about how all the factors work together. Good nutrition supports the energy needed for movement. Movement supports the sleep that allows recovery. Sleep supports the emotional regulation that helps with stress management. Stress management supports the social connections that provide meaning. Meaning supports the motivation to maintain good habits. The circle closes and reinforces itself. This integration also means that you can enter the circle from any point. You do not have to fix everything at once. You can start with whatever feels most accessible or most needed. Maybe you begin by improving sleep. Maybe you begin by adding a daily walk. Maybe you begin by creating a longer gap between dinner and breakfast. Any of these entries can start the process of change. Once you start, other things often become easier. Better sleep makes it easier to make good food choices. More movement makes it easier to sleep well. Improved nutrition provides more energy for movement. The changes support each other, creating momentum that was not there at the beginning. The limits of control. For all the focus on personal choices and habits, it is important to acknowledge the limits of control. Genetics play a role. Luck plays a role. The circumstances of life, many of which are not chosen, shape outcomes in ways that no amount of good habits can completely overcome. This is not a reason to give up on good habits. It is a reason to hold them lightly. You do the things that are likely to support health because they are likely to support health, not because they guarantee any particular outcome. You make peace with uncertainty because uncertainty is the nature of life. Some people who do everything right will still develop health problems. Some people who do everything wrong will live to a vigorous old age. These exceptions exist, but they do not invalidate the general patterns. The general patterns still describe what tends to happen across large populations. The goal, then, is not to guarantee a particular outcome. The goal is to tilt the odds in your favor, to create conditions where good outcomes are more likely, and to live in a way that feels meaningful and satisfying regardless of what the future brings. A calm approach to the second half. The second half of life offers opportunities that the first half does not. There is more perspective, more experience, more understanding of what truly matters. There is less need to prove anything, less pressure to achieve, less urgency about the next milestone. This is a good foundation for health. When you are not constantly striving, when you are not measuring yourself against external standards, when you are not chasing achievements that never quite satisfy, you can pay attention to what actually feels good. You can listen to your body without trying to override it. You can make choices based on how they feel rather than how they look. The practices that support health in later years are not complicated. Move your body regularly, in ways that feel good. Eat foods that come from nature more than from factories. Allow gaps between eating so your body can do its internal work. Protect your sleep. Maintain connections with people who matter. Find things that give your days meaning. Create an environment that supports your intentions. None of this requires perfection. It does not require giving up all foods you enjoy or exercising for hours every day. It requires only a general direction, a tendency over time. a commitment to moving in a way that feels sustainable and right for you. The body you have carried through all these years deserves that much. It has gotten you this far. It will continue to adapt to whatever you give it, for as long as you are here. The question is simply what you choose to give it. Starting from exactly where you are, if there is one idea worth carrying forward from this exploration, it is this. The body you have at 60 or 70 or 80 is not simply the body you were given decades ago, slowly wearing out. It is the body that has adapted to everything you have asked of it, every meal you have fed it, every movement you have required of it, every rest you have allowed it. It is a living record of your habits. And like any record, it can be rewritten. The question is not whether you can return to how you felt at 30. That person had different concerns, different priorities, a different life. The question is whether you can feel fully alive at the age you are now, with energy that matches your intentions, strength that supports your independence, and clarity that lets you engage with the people and pursuits that matter. These are not small questions. They touch on the deepest parts of what it means to grow older while remaining fully yourself. And while the answers are different for everyone, the direction is remarkably consistent across those who age well. They move, not frantically, but regularly. They eat, not perfectly, but thoughtfully. They rest, not lazily, but intentionally. They stay connected, not desperately, but genuinely. If this conversation has stirred something in you, some recognition or curiosity or quiet hope, we would be honored to hear about it in the comments. What you noticed, what you wondered about, what you might explore further. These exchanges become part of the archive too. Wisdom shared among those walking the same path. There are more explorations waiting in this library, more questions to consider, more patterns to notice. If you would like to continue this journey, consider subscribing so that each new recording finds its way to you. Not because there is urgency, but because there is always more to understand about how to live well in the years we have. This is the Longevity Library. Listen, learn, and live longer.